wonderful Monday, actually the first Monday in March. How about that? And so today, of course, you are joining me with issues and answers, and you listen to the new WCEG Network, WCEGTalkRadio.com, or you can watch us live on your smart TV, YouTube, WCEG Network. We're the worldwide community empowerment group where we speak life into the community. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, Instagram at WCEG_talk_radio or at WCEG Network. The topics and opinions are those of the show host, which is myself, and the guests, and not of the WCEG Network. And we thank you for your continued support. I want to take a moment, as I do with all the shows, with remembering those who are no longer here with us, and also appreciating those who are still on the front line for us, and we call them frontline workers, and that can be in any capacity. So we just want to remember those and also appreciate those ones who are still out helping us as we fight this coronavirus. And so now let's get started. We have been talking, and you've been hearing a lot about voters' rights that are under attack. And even with that, you know, there are two sides to every story, and then there's the right side, the correct side of the story. And so what we want to tackle into today is both sides of the story, and then we're going to see how we come out with the right side of the story. And so let's talk about these bills. So within, according to the commanddreams.org, a little research I was doing, the Republicans have introduced over about 106 bills in 28 states, including 17 that are under up under Republican control. And it says in this article to restrict voting access. Some of them are using Trump's claim about voter fraud to justify the bills. And then another, in the same article, what they were suggesting to on the federal level was for them to get rid of the filibuster in the Senate so they can go ahead and pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act and For the People Act. So as you all know, we have elections, have bills that are passed on the state and of course on the local level when it comes to voting, but then there are also bills that are passed on the federal level that guides on the state level. And so in this particular article, that's what they were pushing for, was saying, hey, we need to make sure that we are that on the federal level, that they're doing their part. And I'm trying to make sure that I have all my devices together here. Y'all give me a minute here. And also for the GOP, which is considered to be the Republican Party, can make challenges. These bills are making challenges to the democracy, and there are 3 times more bills that have been introduced than there was last year. So a couple of things that was also identified in this article was the limit of mail voting, also having access, imposing stricter voter ID requirements. And so there are like 4 different things that all the bills across the state kind of have in common. Limit successful pro-voter registration policies, and also enable a more aggressive voter roll purges of the voter roll. So that was just one particular article. And I know you all have been watching when it comes down to what's happening at the state capitol, which is very, very important about what's going on at the state capitol. And so let's get into those particular bills. I don't know why it's coming up on my page. Okay. All right, so let's get into these bills. So the first bill, which was a major bill, was House Bill 531. You heard a whole lot of going on talking about HB 531. And for those who want to follow along with what we're doing, you can go to legis.ga.gov. That's 3ws.legis.ga.gov. That's where you can be able to find all of the bills that are being introduced this particular legislative session. And you can also be able to follow them as far as how they're going through the process. So a bill is introduced, and then it goes to the committee, and then the committee decides yes or no. Committee decides yes, then it goes to another committee, the Rules Committee, and then it eventually should make it to the House chamber floor, or on the Senate side to the Senate chamber's floor. So this particular bill, House Bill 531, it did make it out of the committee. It was kind of fast track. And then it was voted on today in the House chamber. And so it was approved. They had majority vote. And when it's majority vote, doesn't mean that everybody agrees with the bill. It just means that the number that's required to pass that particular bill out of the House passed. And then now it goes over to the Senate for them to go through the whole process over in the Senate. And so let me get my notes here. 531. So what are some of the changes from last year when you look at this particular bill? So of course, everybody know we had the big election in 2020, November, and then you had the special election runoff that was held in January 2021. And so these were statewide, a lot of them were statewide. Of course, you had the local state elected officials that were running. And then you had some other kind of local elections that were taking place, like the judges and clerks of the court and all of those. So these election laws will affect all the municipalities, which are your cities. They will also affect all of your state elections and the federal elections because they're held inside the state. Now, so what I've done is just kind of went through parts of the bill, and I didn't go through the whole entire bill. It's a very long bill, and it has a lot of ins and outs in that bill. And so sometimes when you're not sure about how a particular bill may affect you, you end up maybe sometimes misinterpreting what the bill actually says. So when it comes down to 531, let's start off with one of the things that stood out for me. And so the topic today, of course, is are voter rights under attack? And so when you think about voter rights under attack, you want to always look at, well, yeah, I think the Republicans are trying to keep us from voting. Now, not all the parts of the bill are bad, but a majority of them are some challenges and will cause some challenges to the average voter. Let's start with the whole thing with the Sunday voting and Saturday voting. So usually you're able to go to vote on Sundays, and it's called the whole stroll to the poll. And so when you're strolling to the poll on Sundays, the strolls to the poll, strolling to the poll. And so usually that gives a time, if you're in church, you get a chance, the congregation gets a chance, everybody go and vote. Well, that's been limited to only one time, and even with your Saturday voting, it's been limited. So somebody might say, well, why are they taking away my right to vote on Sunday? You're right. You should be able to vote any day of the week. But when you look at it from the other perspective, and that perspective is how much money is it costing that local municipality or that particular county when it comes down to holding that election? How many people actually are going on Sundays to vote? And those are questions that you should ask your local elections superintendent or supervisor, your local elections board. So each county has an elections board that's appointed by that county commission, or the municipality appoints the individual to oversee that particular those elections that are held citywide. So whenever you have a question about elections, that's who you go see on the local level. Of course, on the state level, you will go to the Secretary of State's office, which is one of the many duties the Secretary of State has, which are elections, corporations, and also they handle anytime you need to go to get your professional license. So that's another thing that they handle. But we're talking about elections today. So ask your local election department or board, how many people in our county for the past 2 election cycles are actually voting on Sunday? And I think that would tell you whether, we might need to cut it, or let it be open, but only for a certain amount of time. I'm not about, restricting anyone's vote, but if that money can be redistributed into another day during the week, or to be able to hire additional staff, because we're going to talk about that as well, about some restrictions now on funding that those local election boards can and cannot receive. So that's one thing I did want to say. So now let's get into absentee ballots. So for those who might not understand how the whole process works with absentee ballots, so say for instance, you just cannot, you're not going to make it to your election poll precinct on election day, or even during the early voting time. So you can now request, under the current law, you can request without having a reason. Well, that's been restricted as far as the reasoning for asking for absentee ballot, sending your application to get the ballot. So now, when you look at that, so you used to be able to have the Friday before the election that's held on Tuesday. We're talking about the general election. You used to be able to send in your application to receive a ballot, and then the elections office could usually be able to send out, that was the last day that they could actually send you a ballot for you to be able to mail back in. So that's been eliminated in HB 531. Wow. So now you have 11 days, 11 days before the election to turn in your ballot, your application to receive your absentee ballot. You also, and the elections office now has 11 days that they have to stop at the 11th day before the election in order to send out your ballots. So if the 12th day comes, they cannot send it out because there'll be a violation of the new law if it's signed. So this is just a bill that was passed on the House. It has to go through the process on the Senate, and then it has to go to the governor's desk for him to either veto it, to sign it, or let it sit for 40 days, and it automatically becomes law. So those are the 3 things. So it's not over yet, but this is a process that is going through right now. So also, to apply for your absentee ballot, which is the application, you have, it's been changed from 180 days. You used to have 6 months before the election. Now you only have a month and 18 days, which is about 78 days. 78 days for you to be able to apply. And so because of that, you're going to end up having to make sure you timing everything to get your absentee application in to the local elections office. Now, also, some people say that they think a good compromise, this has been suggested, would be 5 days before the actual election, which I don't see any problem with that. I think 5 days it'd be reasonable, because really, when you think about the Friday, now this is the other side, the flip side, where I'll agree with changing it, that it should not be that Friday. Now, should it be 11 days, or should it be 5? That's for you to be able to decide on what you think. But I do agree that it should not be so close to that Friday before the election. And now let me tell you why. So you think about it, you're in the office working in the elections office. You get the application in, you have to immediately send it out. Now it's a Friday. So you got to think about the mailing procedures. So it has to go out for that to be delivered to you, because you need it by election day. So you might not get it by then. And then if they're mailing out the ballots Because so first they get the application, they got to input all the information into the system. That takes time. Then also, if you receive the ballot, then they have to mail the ballot out. That's a whole nother process, and you might not get it. So what happens on election day? You have not gotten your absentee ballot. Well, when you go into the polling precinct, you would end up having to ask for a provisional ballot, or you would have to cancel your absentee ballot that you put in a request for, because you can't double vote, because that's against the state law to double vote. And so that causes a lot of confusion. Just think of you in line behind someone and they coming in and say, well, I don't need to get a provisional ballot. So now you got some line, you got time being held up. So I can understand the reasoning behind changing it from that Friday and moving it, and moving it out some to give that local election board enough time for them to process it. Now, let's say on the next thing was the Secretary of the State right now can be the chair of the elections board. This new bill, HB 531, it now restricts the Secretary of State now can only be an ex officio member, which means he's allowed to be on the board, but he doesn't have any voting power, and he's not going to be he or she, because it could be a woman, elected for Secretary of State. Who knows? Go woman. Then that person would not be having any voting power. So that could be understandable. Sometimes in bills, you all have to remember, sometimes it's really not the bill is constructed to do the right thing. Sometimes bills are constructed to punish people for doing some stuff that a particular party feel like they should not have been doing. Now, is this the instance in this case? I don't know. I'm just saying I want to put that out there. And so next we have can the now local elections board receive outside money? So when I say outside money, what happened previously is that other organizations would donate money to the local elections office that they could be able to use to be able to hire more staff. They also could use it to buy supplies. They can also use it for hazard pay, additional pay, like we've gone through the pandemic. And so some of the elections offices use that additional money to help cover additional pay for their staff. They hired line monitors. So I don't know about you all, when I went to vote, there were, and I thought it was nice, there were individuals that came outside when we were in line, and they asked us, actually, they reminded us to make sure we had all of our documentation, our ID ready, and all of that. And then if they saw in the elderly person, because they're allowed to come, I'm glad, I don't think I saw that in the bill where they restricted the elderly from being able to jump the line to come up to the front. But they would come out and help the elderly to come up to the front, elderly and disabled, to be able to come to the front of the line so that they could go ahead and vote ahead of everybody else. And so now, with the new bill, it says that the election supervisor, which is the one that's conducting that's over the elections in that particular county, or the board, cannot receive any of those outside funds unless it comes from the city, the county, or the state of Georgia. Other than that, no more extra money for the elections offices. And so you can look at, there might be a difference in the type of service that you're receiving now, because now you got a little bit more restricted ways that you're able to vote. So you might not have those line monitors out there monitoring the line to make sure that the elderly are being able to come in because they don't have the extra money. And one other thing that was brought to my attention was that some of the local governments in their budget, sometimes certain things that they cannot pay for. And so if there's a certain line item on that particular budget, then that means that their particular elections office won't be able to receive even enough money from that local county. So those are some things to look at. And I'm going to remind you all again, if you want to follow this particular bill and you want to see what all I was talking about and trying to understand it, go to legis, legis.ga.gov, and you will click on advanced search. And that advanced search is going to take you to another page, and you'll put in HB, it'll ask you the bill type. You click on HB, and then over in the other box, you're gonna put the bill number, that's 531. And anytime you wanna look up a bill, you can just go to the other search bar on there and just put in elections, education, children, whatever it is that you wanna look up for this current legislative session, you can. And then it's going to show you who all were the signers on the bill, what's the process of the bill, where is it at, whether it was assigned to a committee, did it pass out of the committee, and all of those other information that's very important for you, for those who like to do research. All right, next thing, we're moving on down the bill. I'm not going to go over that entire bill today. I just want to tell you all that. I just want to touch on a few things of the bill because we're talking about our voters' rights in jeopardy. You know, are they under attack? And so now, a deceased person, I thought this was kind of funny, not because of the deceased person, but what could happen if a person is on the ballot. So right now, in current law, if a deceased person, someone who's passed away, was running for office, their name can be removed and the election can be held, you know, because they're no longer here. The new bill, from my understanding, says the deceased person's name can stay on the ballot. So you'll still go ahead and vote for that person's name, because right now, I think it's so many days before the election, the name can be removed. But with this new bill, it stays on there. So now, just think it was 3 people in the race, and the deceased person received enough votes to go into the runoff. Now, remember, this person's no longer here. So the deceased person could now go, the election can be held with the runoff. So you have a live person that's here and a person that's no longer here that can go into a runoff, run against each other. And then just think, if the deceased person is popular enough, they win the election in a runoff. So then, because they're not here to swear themselves in, of course, a new election would have to be conducted. But why go through all of that when it's already been confirmed that the deceased person is no longer here? So I thought that was a little humor part in there. I just couldn't understand that part. I'm going to listen. You all can also listen to the proceedings that happened today. Anytime a bill comes before the House chamber or the Senate chamber to be voted on, it's debated. And so you have the side that's for the bill, they get up and talk, and then the side that's against the bill, they get a chance to get up and talk. So it's very interesting to be able to listen to that. You go back to that legis.ga.gov, and you would click on the House, and it might come up automatically, but if you click on the House, and you can look at, it should be a section on there where you can look at videos for this particular day, what happened today. So you need to make sure you find the March the 1st video, and you can listen. You might have to scroll it forward some to get to it because a lot of other procedural stuff that takes place during session. But I guarantee you it's very interesting. I listened to part of it to hear the pros and the cons to the bill. So that's just another little tidbit I want to throw in for you. All right, so now next to the next thing on the list. So now if there are more than 2,000 people that are registered at a polling location, the elections office can add poll workers or machines at their discretion. Now, with the new bill, if there are more than 2,000 voters at a precinct, it's a voter precinct, you must get, there must be a new precinct that's put in place no later than 60 days before the election, or more equipment has to be provided. And this is so that the people so that the voters are not standing in line for more than an hour. So one of the questions I asked was, How if on election day you don't know if all 2,000 people are coming out to stand in line for more than 1 hour? How do you determine whether you need to get the new equipment? So when I asked, someone that works in the elections office, and they said based on previous data that they would use, then that's how they'd be able to determine whether they need to go ahead and get create a new precinct or move or add more equipment. Now, with a new precinct, everyone knows, everybody get confused. You've been voting at this precinct for the last 5 years, at least the last election, and then you get ready to go back again, and you have a new precinct. Of course, by law, they're supposed to, the elections office is supposed to send you notice about that the polling precinct has moved. So you all got to be diligent and paying attention. Another place to check your polling precinct location is going to mvp.sos.ga.gov. That's my voter page. You can Google my voter page. You put in your information, it will tell you who what your polling precinct is. On the left-hand side of that page, you'll be able to see where you're supposed to go and vote. Well, on the page, you'll be able to see where you're supposed to go vote. All right, now if you all have any questions or comments that you want to make sure you put them into the comment section. I know it's a lot, especially when you're trying to dissect the bill. It's not very easy because you're trying to look at what's the intent of the bill and then what actually will happen if this bill passes. So next thing on the list, talking about buses. So some of our some of our election offices have buses, election early voting buses. Well, and most of these buses were purchased through the grant money, the money I talked about earlier, the outside money. So I think Fulton, Gwinnett, and Douglas, and I could be wrong, but I think those are three that have these early voting buses. So with the new, and they can be used for early voting. The new law says if it's passed into law, it's just proposed right now, you all to pass the House, it has to go to the Senate and then to the governor's desk. Now the likelihood of it passing is very strong because you have a majority Republicans that are in charge. And while I'm talking about that, let me get on this to correct some people. So during the November election, a lot of people said, oh, Georgia has turned blue. And I constantly said, no, Georgia has not turned blue. Georgia was blue enough to vote in President Biden and Vice President Harris, but the state of Georgia itself is not blue. It's not even purple, and purple is red and blue mixed together. So if you look at that, and the reason I say Georgia's not blue, you look at this election law that's 531 and some more that's going to be pushed through that has already passed out of the Senate. If Georgia was blue, this bill would have made it and passed through the House chamber because you would have had more Democrats. So Georgia is not blue. So for those who want to debate me, you can, but I know Georgia is not blue. It might want to be blue, but it's not blue. Okay, because when the redistricting starts happening, the legislature is going to go into a special session, I think during the fall or sometime, to start redrawing maps. And those maps are redrawn supposedly based on the census data. That's why everyone was telling you all, make sure you fill out your census form. Fill out your census form, because that determines how much money comes to the local government, and it also determines how many people you're gonna get a chance to represent you at the state capitol and also in Washington, D.C. So there might be enough people that moved into Georgia to add on another congressional seat. You won't get another Senate seat because there's only 2 per state, a total of 100. But there are 435 U.S. House of Representatives. And those in Georgia, we have 14 congressional districts. So there could be a 15th added on, but it depends on if everybody was counted. Now, going back to redistricting, I'm gonna get back to the 531 bill, but it's all related because it deals with election. So with the redistricting, there's an opportunity or a chance that the way that the majority who's in charge, Republicans, may end up redrawing some areas. And they might end up redrawing it where some of the Democrats have to run against each other. And yeah, the sitting Democrats that are in office now, it's a possibility they'll have to run against each other because they'll all be in the same district. It has happened before. It happened back in 2012, which was right after the 2010 census. So there's a possibility. And so y'all be on the lookout for that. But again, Georgia is not blue. Now, going on to, I talked about the buses. So now these buses were able to pick people up and take them to the polls to vote early. Now they can only be used for emergency purposes as declared by the governor. So if we're not in an emergency, state of emergency, like what we are now, then those little beautiful buses will not be rolling nowhere to pick up nobody to take them to vote early. So that's that. And I saw a comment that came in that wanted to thank me for making that clear about, I don't know if it was about the Georgia not being blue or all the other stuff, but you're welcome. So next thing on the new bill. So now the regulations for third parties being able to send out applications, there's really no strong regulation. So when I say third party, that means it's not the elections office or the state of Georgia Secretary of State's office that's sending out these applications. We're talking about, because you got which is kind of crazy to me, but you got to apply for an absentee ballot. So you got to send the application, then the elections office send you back the ballot. Then you take the ballot and send it back to them. It's a lot of steps, but okay. So now what this new bill is saying, that no third party, which means anybody outside of who I said, can send you any applications if the application without certain things have to be attached to it. So let's just say Green Organization for Voting Rights. This is the one I made up. And if it is an organization, I didn't know about it, but I just made it up. So say for instance, this particular organization, the Green Organization for Voting Rights, they want to make sure that everybody in a certain area receives their application. So they come and knock on your door and they say, hey, we're doing absentee ballot applications. Would you like to participate or would you like to send one in? They said, yeah. Now they used to just have you to sign it and then they can fax it in or they can take a picture of it with the phone and email it in. No. The new bill says they have to have some identified information enclosed, which means you have to have your photo ID, a copy of your photo ID. The address that you're registered at has to be on the application. The address where you want to send it to has to be on the application. And your date of birth has to be on the application. And then the third party, of course, have to put their contact information on the form. So now the elections office knows who sent you that application. And then also now that opens up what's called a possibility of identity fraud, because you don't know who that third party. I told you, this Green Organization for Voter Rights. You don't know who that organization may have hired to work in there and whether they did a background check or they just got volunteers who want to do a good thing. But now they have a copy of your ID, which they know your date of birth, they know your address, all this information. Who's to say that they're going to send it in? They're going to send it in, but who's to say they're not going to make a copy and keep it for themselves? So that's the other part of, why is that now being required? When the applications are sent in, those election officers are double checking to make sure you're registered to vote. And they're also checking the signatures that come in and make sure your signature is matching. And then that's a whole nother thing about signature matching. None of the people that I know of that's working in these election offices have been certified as signature verifiers, like with the GBI or the FBI. They have people they hire, and that's all they do is study how someone's signature is. So that's another flip side. On the other side, they could say, well, we don't know if that's that person's signature. They could have made up some information, made up a signature, and then they get an application, they get the ballot, and they go and vote, but they weren't supposed to vote, and it was somebody else that's supposed to vote it. So, like I said, there's always two sides to this bill, and then there's the right side, the truthful side. And your job as a voter, and also, even if you're not a registered voter and say you're a non-citizen, but you're here legally, that you have friends of other people that are registered voters. And when they vote, they're voting for your best benefit as well, even though you can't vote. We have children that's under 18. They can't vote, but those who are voting for their future. And so it's important for you to be an educated voter. If nothing else, with this show this evening, this afternoon, my goal is to make sure you're more educated. I can't give you everything in 1 hour, but and I'll talk about that too. I actually have a Stovall policy series that I've been doing, and that's when we really delve into bills, define the ins and outs. I show you online how to go and look up bills, how to be able to know what the budgets are, and all those other things that you need to know as a citizen, so you can ask the best question. One thing about it, if you don't ask the right question, you're not going to get the best answer that you need. Because if you ask the wrong question, or you ill-informed or uninformed or under-informed, then the information, the answer you're going to get is still not going to get you to where you want to be. All right, so we're moving on along. And remember, if you have any questions, definitely put them in the comment section, or you have some comments. Whether you agree with me or not, it's okay. Because I know I studied the bill, and I know what it says and what it doesn't say, but it's okay. You don't have to agree with me, because the opinions expressed on WCEG Talk Radio are those of the hosts and guests, and not other radio stations. So don't blame WCEG. We love WCEG. And we thank you for following us on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, and also on YouTube. So the next part of that bill, we on House Bill 531. So now, right now in the law right now, it's not specific about drop boxes, and that they could be open. When I say not specific, that means they could be open on election day and actually stay open 24 hours. Now, for those who are not sure what a drop box is, because some of you all might have just went in person on election day and you didn't use the option of the drop box. Myself, I used the drop box because I didn't want to be standing in no line. Now, when I got ready to vote for myself for the early in November, I didn't use the drop box. I went and stood in line because I wanted to go and place a vote for my own self for U.S. Senate. So I didn't use the drop box. But for the election prior to that, it was some other elections we were having. I did use the drop box, and it was very convenient. And I encourage other people to use the drop box, because you just drive by. It looks just like a mailbox, but it has voter information on it, and you just put in your sealed ballot in that drop box. Well, now there's going to be restrictions to you using the drop box. Now, what are those restrictions, Valencia? Only one drop box for every 100,000 people. So if you live in a county or a city that has less than 100,000 people, you only get one drop box. And you think about it. Now, what if all those people, you had a large percentage of people that wanted to use the drop box? You're only going to have one. Now, this last election, there were several drop box locations. I saw some at the library. And those locations had to have a monitored camera. So it was secured, and the camera ran 24 hours, so you could drop that off at any time. I didn't hear no cases where somebody went and picked up the whole drop box and took it somewhere and took out those particular ballots that were in there. We didn't hear any cases of that. I even was listening on the Secretary of State, their state election board. That's another thing. It's kind of hard to figure out where the login information is on the website. Secretary of State, you need to do a better job with that. But if you go to the Secretary's sos.ga.gov and you click on elections, And then on the left-hand corner, you're going to go down to State Election Board. You click on that, and it'll tell you about the meetings that they have. So they have, anytime someone violates, like we're talking about this law, when you violate this particular law, you have to go before the elections, the State Elections Board. You don't go to the, they don't send you down to the police precinct for your city or the county. You go to the Elections Board. The Elections Board then have investigators that they send out to investigate what you were charged with. And if they find, and then they bring their findings, first they have make up a recommendation. They bring that recommendation before the State Elections Board. And then once they bring it for the Elections Board, then the State Elections Board members, which are appointed, then they make a decision as to do they agree with the recommendation from the investigators, or they not agree with it. And some of the recommendations could be getting them a letter of instruction, which means a warning letter. You did wrong, don't do it again. This is a violation of this code, blah, blah, blah. Another recommendation is to refer to the Attorney General's office. That's the Attorney General, the State Attorney General. That's the one that everybody vote for. So your case could be referred to that particular office. And then that office, the Attorney General office, decides whether they want to move forward with the case that's presented to them. And so some people have gone to jail or been fined for violating these state rules. And that's why I'm taking time to go over this, because these rules are not a joke. You can be taken before that State Elections Board as if you were in court. And so I encourage you all, when you get a chance, you just have some time. They already pre-recorded. You can click on that, some of the meetings, and listen. You will be surprised at what some people are charged with when it comes down to election fraud. So I'm not gonna get on to that. That might be another topic. I might do another show about, what are some of the charges that people are charged with when they violate the state law when it comes down to elections, and what's the outcome on some of them. So anyway, going back to the drop boxes. So now the new law says if it becomes law, the likelihood of it is, I'm about 90% sure it's going to be signed into law. Unless something happened and the world ends today, then guess what? It won't even matter. We all the ones that believe it, we all be going to heaven, and we don't have to worry about elections no more. But till then, this is where it's going to end up being. So now with the drop boxes, now they must be closed as soon as advanced voting is over with. There'll be no more drop boxes for you to drop off your ballot. And also, they have to be closed down when the office is closed. So the office open 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. If you come driving up at 5:01, you cannot put your ballot in that drop box. So those are restrictions. And I agree, those are restrictions. Why I just can't drive on the weekend? I'm out. I have my ballot. I want to drop it off. Let me drop my ballot. That's my ballot. Why I have to go through between 8 and 5? And then after advanced voting, I might decide I saw something new, different about a candidate I didn't previously know. Oh, you know what? I'm going to wait before I vote. Let me see. Something else might come up close to the election day. That should be my right to be able to drop that ballot off and not have to try to get out my car, go into the into the election hour, or go, if it's advanced voting, go inside the precincts to vote. Anyway, so those are restrictions coming with that drop box. All right, and we're talking about House Bill 531. At the discretion, right now, is at the discretion of the election supervisor on when, if the votes are not all counted, as far as letting the staff go and come back the next day. So some of you all saw some stuff on TV about, I think it was in Fulton County, it might have been some others, where the people left, and then somebody said, I saw somebody rolling a bag of votes somewhere, and it just got all controversial. So I'm thinking the reasoning, I'm not saying I agree with it, but the reasoning behind it is that if all the votes are counted on election night, that includes the absentee ballots, the early advance voting ballots, the election day ballots, and the provisional ballots. All have to be counted on election night. Boy, they're gonna have to get them people, pay them people some more money to be able to stay there all night. You done been there at 6 a.m. probably, especially your supervisor, all the way to polls close at 7. In some places like Atlanta, they close at 8. Then you got to stay there you're going to be pulling the all-nighter to the next day. Oh, look at him. I don't know who this is calling y'all. Okay. And so that means that they're going to be pulling the all-nighter, and those votes have to be counted. Now, let me tell you something for those who might not know about provision ballots. Those provisional ballots have to verify information on that. That's why they're provisional. They're not the actual ballot. The original ballot is provisional. So they have to verify certain information on there. And in some counties that are small and some municipalities that are small, of course, it takes them a little bit more time. Right now in the state law, it says 60 days. Now it's been reduced down. I'm sorry, hold on. I was talking about something else in the law. Let me go back to what I'm talking about right now. So all these four types of ballots have to be counted on that particular night. Now, all the poll watchers, another part of the new bill, all poll watchers must be able to observe the voting. Well, you know, that's good. People say, yeah, we should be able to. But another thing is that all of them need to be trained. You don't need people going in there willy-nilly and don't understand what's going on with the process. They need to be trained as to what it is that they're supposed to be looking at, not going in trying to come up with some kind of theory or something that's not even happening. So yes, the poll watchers should be, but they need to be ensured that they had to go through training in order to be a poll watcher, and also to be able to come in and observe the actual counting of the voting. And it should be just like with anything else, but there are certain things that need to happen so that you cut down on so much confusion that we saw happen during this last election. All right, next. A lot of you all were have heard about them food and them water bottles in the election line. Now, right now, you can give out water and you can give out food with the people that's in the line for election when they get ready to vote. Now, you cannot, in the current law, you cannot offer any gifts for anyone to register to vote or to go and vote. That is against the law. I don't have no problem with that. And now let me tell you an incident that happened. I was listening to the state elections office, and they had a case that came up. Looking at my time. Okay, they had a case that came up. And this particular case, the lady worked at the senior citizen apartment, senior citizen complex. I'm not gonna name it. You got to go and listen to it for yourself. So and so her intent that she said was to get more senior citizens to actually go and register to vote. Now, most of the time, the senior citizens are usually the ones that most register anyway. They're in the other age group. But you do have some that might not have registered, so I give that little part. So she put up a sign and said that, you know, if you register to vote, you can get your name put in for a raffle. But I think it was either $100 or $150. Well, y'all, that's against the law. You can't do that. And y'all have heard the part that says ignorance of the law is no excuse. It still means it's still the law. Well, in that case, she didn't get no letter of instruction. She got recommended to the Attorney General's office for prosecution. And she said, I didn't know. They said, they don't care about you didn't know. That is the law. You cannot offer anything in exchange for registering to vote or to vote. And so for those of you all that during this time, you know, you're just gonna, when the new law passed, there are gonna be some challenges with getting people out to vote. But you better go and research and find out from these other election organizations that are out here what you can and can't do so that you don't get yourself in trouble because you think you're trying to do the right thing, but you will be prosecuted and probably end up going to jail or getting a fine. Then you think about it, you get a fine to go to jail, that could affect your job or in a future job. So you got to look at that long term. These election laws are no joke. All right, now, next thing. So anyway, you can't offer any food. You can't give them any food to anybody or drinks while they're in line. So the best bet that you all can do, if you dropping somebody off to vote, You better give them that little food package before they get out your car. And then tell them to take everything they need, the medicine, everything they need, because they cannot, nobody will be walking through the line and giving out water bottles or giving out snacks. You got to take it with you. And just in that particular case, if you are found guilty of giving out water or food, you'll be charged with a misdemeanor. So I just want to tell you, now some of the other cases, some of the other things I talked about, there might be more severe charges, but I just wanted to make sure I mentioned that about it being a misdemeanor. Okay, we're at about 4:51. I have about 9 more minutes to go. So get prepared, you all, for this new election year. And of course, there are going to probably be challenges to the bills in court. And so, with any challenges that come across in the courts, those bills cannot go into effect until there's a ruling given by the judge. But there's some other bills, portions of that bill that's going to probably be overruled. Ruled in favor of the Republicans of the bill that they put together. And so if that happens, then you'll have portions of the bill that'll go into effect July 1st, and other portions of the bill might be held up in court. So those are just the consequences when you talk about voters' rights. Are they under attack? Yes, they are. To a certain extent, they are. But that's the reason why you got to be more vigilant, because the key is that if you make sure that you're voting and you're talking to others, and there might be others that don't look like you, because see, you don't live in those areas where the Republicans vote at most of the time. And when you don't live in those areas, you don't have an influence over them because you can't vote for them. And that's what all that matters. So anybody that's running for office, unless they're not running again, they are concerned about how many voters can I get, how many can I convince to vote for me, whether I'm the best candidate or not, how many can I persuade? And so because you're not in their particular district, you talking to them might tug at their heart, but then they're going to have some others that tugging at their hearts as well, that they end up not listening to you. But you might have some friends or co-workers that live in their district, and you can have the opportunity to express to them why you feel that these particular bills and these things I talked about are unfair, and how they limit and don't really give freedom like we're supposed to have freedom for being able to vote. It's not allowed. It's not given that in certain instances. Okay, 2 more bills I'm going to touch on, and then we're going to get ready to wrap it up for today. So Senate Bill 184, y'all remember I told you how to go and look up those Senate bills by going to legis, legis.ga.gov. Do your homework. Y'all got the research. On this particular bill, each day beyond the 30 days for voting, data is fully entered. In other words, everything has to be entered into the system. So earlier, a few minutes ago, I was talking about provisional ballots. So these provisional ballots, in the instance of provisional ballot, any data, voting data, has to be entered into the system within 30 days. Each day beyond 30 days is not fully entered into the system. That particular election office is subject to $100 fine. So right now, sometimes, like I said earlier, though, provisions may take longer than the 30 days because the law right now says 60. So Senate Bill 184, we're not talking about House Bill 531, that's a whole nother bill. Senate Bill 184 says it needs to be done in those 30 days. So Senate Bill 184 and Senate Bill 188 have both passed out of the Senate. They're over in the House, I think it's the Special Elections Committee, to be heard by them. Now, once that bill, those 2 bills, the Senate bills, are heard by that Elections Committee, and it makes it to the House chamber to vote on, the next stop for that bill is to the governor's desk. So now, Senate Bill 188, the precinct numbers must be reported daily to the state. Now, I'm okay with that. Because right now, when you want to find out how many people voted provisional, how many voted absentee, all those other options, you now have to go to that particular county's website and look it up. And most of the time, it's not very readable, easily to read and understand. So what this bill says is that it now has to be uploaded to the state website, and the state, the Secretary of State is responsible for keeping that, maintaining that website that anybody you can be able to go on there and look at it just like you would on election day. So that's what that particular bill does. Another one is Senate Bill 241, what the Secretary of State could now, in an essence, kind of take over what's going on with the elections. Once the Board of Elections supervisor or that Board of Elections receive a reprimand, they have a hearing that say they receive a reprimand, and then if they found not to be in compliance after their reprimand, then they can be removed from the board and the election supervisor as well. What this does, it takes away the rights of the citizens who elected the individuals to appoint them to the Board of Elections. Now you got a Secretary of State's office that's able to come in and supersede what the people have asked their elected officials to appoint these people to this board. So I don't agree with that. It should not be the Secretary of State is dabbling into what's going on in that local board. That needs to be handled locally. And also, and if they're in violation, then you take them through the hearing process that they're doing now, and then you give them a letter of instruction, or you either they recommend it to the Attorney General's office. Let it stay the way it is. Don't go in there trying to now try to do micromanage on these particular election boards in offices. So that was that. So I'm going to get ready to end up my show for today. And what I want to do is give you a few announcements. And thank you all for tuning in to WCEG Talk Radio. And my show is Issues and Answers. And so I'm on every other Monday from 4 to 5. Our next show will be March the 8th. And on that particular show, I am March the 15th be the next show, not the 8th, March 15th. And so we're looking at maybe bringing someone on to talk about the fatherhood program, paternity court, what happens with that, and also some other services that are available for fathers. I think it's important. We talk about mothers all the time, and as you all know, March the 21st is designated as Single Parents Day in the state of Georgia. And that was a bill that I was the lead sponsor on that bill, and it was signed into law. And so I have a special place in my heart for single parents. And it's just not for mothers, but also our fathers who want to do the right thing. But sometimes we have provisions and laws that prevent them or make a stumbling block too hard for them to be able to be the fathers that they want to be. Now, some of them are deadbeat, and yeah, they need to get everything coming to them. But others that are not, we need to be able to make sure that they have the support that they needed. So this evening at 7 o'clock, if you're not busy, you can also go on the website, www.gayouthcareercenter.com. And you can register for my Stovall Policy Series at 7 p.m. The cost is $30. And we're going to be talking about what role do political parties play in the passage and the defeat of bills. And also, we're going to be analyzing some current bills. So we're going to be taking House Bill 531 and a couple of others, and I'm going to take you through that whole process. So go to GA Youth, YOUTH, Career, CAREER, Center.com, GAYouthCenter.com, and register for the class tonight at 7 o'clock. And it's $30. And then I have my last class to be March the 8th. So those of you who are interested in running for office, the topic is, so you want to be elected. So we're going to go through the ins and outs of being a candidate. And once you're elected, what responsibility you have to the public that actually elected you, because you have a responsibility. And so I want to give it to you from different points of views, to make sure that if you're running for office or you're interested, it's a huge responsibility. Like we're talking about this House Bill 531 and all the other bills that are being introduced down at the state capitol. You have to have people that are going to do the right thing, and you have to know it. And so it starts with you if you're running for office. I want to thank the Forest Park High School, Mr. Manning, the principal, and the staff. I received my Leatherman's jacket. It has far big F on there, and it's also the same color as my alma mater of Southside Comprehensive High School, the lasers, go lasers. So I love my jacket. Thank you all so very much. The time has come. We will see you all, if not this evening at 7, we'll see you again on March the 15th. Thank you so much for tuning in to WCEG Network on Issues and Answers with Honorable Valencia Stovall. Good night.